the agenda for this session is, first off, I'm going to talk about the new features in FileMaker Go 17. Maybe you know them all, and then you can just go on with your sleep. Or maybe this is just a good occasion to get a recap of the new features. Then I'm going to go to the computer and try to share my experiences during the development of DevCon2Go. Hopefully, you will be able to pick up some tips and tricks that you can use in your own mobile apps. And then finally, I'm going to touch on the considerations that you should do when you determine whether you should deploy to FileMaker Go or to a native iOS app using the iOS app SDK. So let's dig in. First off, the new features. We have sensors. We have local notifications. We have the master detail, the data API. Okay, I know it's not running on FileMaker Go, but I'm going to talk about it briefly in regards of synchronization. Then there's type ahead and autocomplete, shortcuts, and finally, there's been some improvements to the Launch Center context menu. So let's dig into the sensors. There are many of the sensors available in this step, not all of them, but many are already. And you need to pay attention that not all sensors are present on all devices. For example, there are more sensors on an iPhone than you have on an iPad. Okay? It's a single calculation function with parameters, which means that the choice that FileMaker did in making it a calculation function makes it much easier for them to add functionality in the future. So that means whatever you can think of as sensors, ask FileMaker to do them, because it will be fairly easy for them to put them in when they have a calculation function, okay? It will be expandable in the future. So let's look at some of the sensors we have. The battery we can ask for. Location, well, that's not new. We have other calculation functions for getting the location, asking the GPS about the location, but it wouldn't make sense to not include it in this new calculation function. So it's there as well. So we can ask for the altitude, speed, acceleration, magnetic field, and the compass heading, step counts, air pressure, and finally there's a function to list all the sensors that are available on this particular device. And that's perfect, so you can ask for this first and see if the specific sensor that you want to provide feedback from is actually present on the device before you go and ask for the sensor readings. So how does it look? Well, this is the calculation function. Get sensor, there's a function you need to tell this calculation what are the functions that you're looking for. And then depending on which of the sensors you want to talk with, there will be parameters. So for example, the location values, it has two parameters, which is in this case 110, meaning I want to have an accuracy of 100 meters and a timeout of 10 seconds. So basically, the GPS will look at the satellites, the GPS satellites, and that can take some time, but we are able to put in a timeout saying, don't look any longer than 10 seconds. That's even long time, right, for the user to be waiting. So another one is the step count, and the parameter for the step count is seconds. So basically, 86,400 seconds equals 24 hours. So what you're doing is give me the number of steps that I've taken the last 24 hours from today and X seconds back in time. And if you noticed when you open the DevCon2Go on an iPhone, we give you that step count and tell you how your activity has been during DevCon. I'm going to show you the code in detail so you can see how I did that. And then finally, the get sensor available. It's very easy, okay? Let's move on to local notification. This is amazing, in my opinion, because now we have true iBeacon support. When we are coupling it with the region monitor step, and well, I assume that you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, you can make a note that you can go back and research what I'm talking about in regards of the region monitor. I will show you the scripts in DevCon2Go, and you can dig into the code when you get home, so you can learn more about this. But we had the region monitor script step added last year, which effectively means that you fire off a command to the operating system saying, please look for this iBeacon, or it could actually be a geofence. So look for this particular iBeacon. When you get close to that iBeacon, it will run a script that you set up. And that's beautiful, except that the region monitor script step only works when FileMaker Go is in the foreground. It isn't always in the foreground, but with the local notifications, we can actually ship off a notification to the iOS, which will then notify us if we are not in FileMaker Go. But since this is a script step, it's a separate script step, we can actually use it for more. So it's brilliant of FileMaker to give us a separate script step for this. If you want to schedule something, you can do that with ship off a local notification with a delay. And that's actually also a feature that is built into the DevCon2Go. When you have added sessions to my schedule, you'll see there's an icon to the left which you can press, and then you ship off a local notification, say, please notify me approximately 15 minutes before this event starts. And that is done by saying, so when is this session going, and what is the time now, and then we subtract that from each other, and we get a result of seconds that we need to delay this notification. Just to show you how the steps are involved in order to integrate this local notification with the region monitor step. We start with firing off a region monitor, saying to the operating system, please look for this iBeacon. And when you find it, tell me to run a specific script. That's what's going on in the region monitor. When an iBeacon is detected, the operating system ships a command to FileMaker Go, even if it's in the background, saying, run this script. And the script is called a notification script. So we are running a script that is firing off a notification to the local operating system, which will then notify us. Okay? It sounds like a little bit around, but it actually makes sense, and this is the easiest way to do it, actually. So it looks like this on your lock screen. You'll see the icon of FileMaker Go and the name of FileMaker Go. We can have a headline and a message. So this looks cool, right? Okay? So what would be the obvious question be at this time? You develop solutions. So wouldn't it be cool if we could have our logo and our solution name there? Many people have asked that question, but unfortunately that's not possible since this is controlled by the iOS. And it basically says, here's a notification showing the icon of that app and the name of that app. So if you would like to have your own logo and solution name, you will need to deploy as a native iOS app using the iOS app SDK. But hey, there's a way of doing it. So when you tap and hold it, you'll see that it pops up here. And in this case, there's 2 buttons. You can configure up to 3 buttons for this notification. The first one here is show me the details. So this notification is one I've shipped off in order to be sure that I remember to turn up at a specific session. And when I press the show me the details, it actually fires up a FileMaker script within FileMaker Go that goes to the session detail layout and search for this particular session so I can read more in detail. Or I can hit the dismiss. But what's even more cool is that if you have an Apple Watch, the notification will show on your Apple Watch as well. Isn't that cool, right? So, yeah, okay, thank you, but I didn't create the feature, so direct your credits to the proper team. Moving on, master detail. This is awesome. In DevCon2Go, we are using it on the iPads for the speakers. We have the list of speakers, the list of records, and the details. It's incredibly easy to set up. You just draw a portal and say, show records from the current table, and then it works. Then you just apply the fields on the portal, and it just works. It's not only an Emma feature. And then people would say, who's Emma, right? Emma is a synonym of the new people we want to attract to the platform. It's someone who's new and who's not that advanced. We have been able to create the master detail before using a normal portal going through a relationship. But you had to be able to create a self-join relationship, and if you wanted to apply filters on what should be shown in the portal, you would have to go in and apply either a portal filter or relationship filter. But this is a perfect UI UX for the iPad. It looks like something that people already know. It looks like your mail application. It's also a perfect UI for a desktop application because it looks like something people know, right? Not only is it easy to add, but it's also blazing fast in my testings and in my opinion. And that's because FileMaker is doing something behind the scenes in order to make this work really fast. It's natural that a normal portal will get slow because it's showing records through a relationship. And if you apply filters, it gets even more slow. And if you have thousands of records, it gets even more slow because it's through a relationship. But with the master detail, with the current table, it's blazing fast. And one other thing is that it works on the current found set, which means that you can just apply a normal FileMaker find, and it will be reflected on the portal. So no more needs for writing up complex filtering calculations in the portal filter. That essentially means that The FileMaker has to download all the records and then apply the filter to the records in order to filter the portal. So if you have 1,000 records and you only want to show 10 records, you have to download the 1,000 records and then apply the filter to only show the 10 records. This works on the current found set and blazing fast, but it also means that it respects the current sort order. Applying sort order to a portal is, well, if you only have a fixed sort order, that's easy enough to do. But if you want to give the user a way of doing their own sorting, it's very complex to do that in the old way. But master detail is so easy to do. I just shot a video on just to show, if you haven't seen it on an iPad, it's extremely fast and it gives you a nice balance and yeah, well, we don't change layouts. So that's what I mean about giving a great overview. You can work very fast with your data. And I mean, I think this is really fast. Data API. So why am I talking about Data API when this is about FileMaker Go? Well, this is perfect when your application needs to work offline. And there are many, many reasons for wanting an app to work offline with FileMaker Go. It could be that users are in the middle of nowhere with very bad network connections, for example, or it could be that sometimes there are network connections and sometimes not. What about this Data API? Well, you can use that for synchronizing data, and synchronizing is not really a great term because synchronizing basically means that you want a complete copy on both sides. But you can use the Data API to push data into the server or fetch data from the server. And the great thing is that this is lightweight calls. So when you do this by opening a file on FileMaker server natively, there's a greater overhead because of the FileMaker protocol. It has to open more things, it has to download more records and the full record, where the Data API is only downloading the data that you actually ask for. So meaning that the layouts that you're targeting in your API call, the fields that are on that layout is the only data that you download from the server. The same when you push data. So that means we can make these calls incredibly light. There are other sessions that talk into details on how to integrate with or interact with the Data API. I just wanted to mention that I think this is a perfect situation for using with FileMaker Go. It's also transactional, which means it's all or nothing. This is extremely great when, and very important when you work with offline applications. We want to know that either all is coming up or down or not at all. We don't want partial data on either side. Okay, so one of the next features is type ahead and autocomplete. This is a huge time saver, and it works now in FileMaker Go. Type ahead helps narrow down a value list, and autocomplete makes selections fast. The next one, and there's a reason I'm jumping to the next one immediately. I'll come back with a video showing these features. The shortcuts and drag and drop is another huge time saver. Whenever you need to input data into a solution, you want to do it as fast as possible, right? So with shortcuts, you can do this if you have an iPad with a physical keyboard attached. Many of the desktop shortcuts will also work on the iPad as well. And drag and drop is great when you're working with images or text, for example. So here's just a small video where I show this type ahead concept, and it's autocomplete. And as you can see, it's very easy. I only type a few characters or choose on the value list. And as you can see, the website, there's no autocomplete here, so it takes more time. I think they are extremely great. And this is the drag and drop. I have the split view screen on the iPad, and I have my camera roll here, and I just happen to drag a photo of some FileMaker developers having a beer. These are really great features, in my opinion. Okay, moving on, the Launch Center context menu. It's very subtle, but I wanted to just take it in. The context menu now gives you more options. You can rename a file, or you can share just using the context menu, which means that you don't have to go into a specific select mode and select the file, and then you can rename or share it. And you just tap and hold, and then the context menu will show up where you can share or rename immediately. They are really nice enhancements, especially if you're using these features. Should we look at some code? So first off, we go into developer tools, and here's the unlock. I know I might be putting a lot of emphasis on this, but the last couple of years, I've had so many emails from very clever developers saying, how can I open this, unlock this app? And I just wanted to show it's right there. And if you read the text on the first screen, you'll know. So this is the DevCon to Go. It is, by the way, completely unlocked. The purpose about doing this is that we really want you to dig in and steal all the code for your own projects. So please do so. I just want to touch very briefly on the relationship graph, because in order to really understand all of the details, I think it's nice to know a little bit about the structure. So we are using a sort of the selector connector model. If you don't know what that is, you can go to Geist's blog and watch a video about that. But we are using a version of this where we have the connector table in the middle, and from here we can look to all the data tables, and we have some other TOs that are working here. If you go to the brain baskets, you can download the conventions we are using throughout the application. Just if you want to understand those, or if you want to maybe implement them in your own apps. Okay, so let's dig into the scripts. So let's start with the sensor. I realize that the code is small, but I will zoom, so it will be easier for you to see what I'm talking about. So this is the startup script, and several things happened in the startup script, but in this section, this is new, I actually wrote it here. In this section, it's big enough, right? Okay, in this section, first I'm gonna determine whether we are on an iPhone or iPad, because the sensors are only available on iOS devices. And if the code runs on an iOS device, we are, where's the dialog? Here. We are asking for the activity. So this is the dialog that shows up when you launch the app. And it's basically saying we want to get the step count, the step distance, the step floors up, step floors down. So actually there are more sensors than I just talked about. I just mentioned the most important ones. Go and look in the documentation in order to get all the details of the sensors. Basically, I just say if we haven't started the conference yet, so meaning if you open the application before Monday morning at 8 a.m., it would just show you what your activity has been the last 2 days. But now the conference has started, it will start tell you how your activity has been since Monday morning, 8 a.m. And I'm just doing a calculation here saying what is the current timestamp now, and if we subtract the Monday morning 8 a.m., we get a number of seconds, which we can apply as the parameter for the functions. So I set this into some variables, and these variables, well, basically, I'm not looking if we have the sensors available. I'm just asking for the sensor readings, because this is very lightweight, it's very fast. So I just determined if the step variable is empty, it's not empty, then it must mean that we have something to show in the custom dialog, and we get it here. Here's the dialog that you are prompted with. There's a few custom functions involved as well in order to format things nicely. Another function here is that you can go into the developer tools, sensor functions. Here they are. So basically, this is a button. So when you hit the button, well, on desktop you are notified that it's not possible, but we could just do that on the iPad. Just a second. There it is. Okay, so I hit this button, developer tools, sensor functions, and now I hit the get sensor readings. Some of the readings, especially the location functions, they take a little more time, so that's why you see the dialog. So now we have, I'm not able to zoom here, I hope it's okay, but I can tell you it's showing the battery level, the battery status, it's unplugged, there's 74% battery level. There's the altitude, the rotation rate, the acceleration by user, the acceleration by gravity. Speed and heading is empty here, either because we don't have the sensors or because I'm sitting, not moving. We have magnetic fields, compass headings. The step counts are empty because there's no step count sensors on the iPad, but we have the air pressure. And at the bottom, you can see a list that shows all the sensors that are available here. Okay, so let's go back and just to set the code. So basically the sensor values is just a calculation here. And since most of them returns in a return delimited format, I just changed that to the dot character instead in order to list them nicely on both iPad and iPhone. So they look like this, and if you want to play around with the sensor stuff, you can just go in and grab the code here and play around with it. So that was sensor. Okay, so the iBeacon, that's a little bit more complex. So I just want to show, well, there's a lot of comments in the script, so you can figure out what to do. But basically, what we do here is we get a list of the location, meaning a list of the rooms that we want to monitor for. And in each room, there are iBeacons set up. And these iBeacons have different IDs in order for us to be able to track which room we are in. So there's several things going on, but basically if you have clicked the notify button, we will do a configure region monitor step where we are using the iBeacon notification, and if you didn't click that, we are doing another step that basically say when you reach the iBeacon, then fire off another script. The reason is that we cannot dynamically set the script to run when a beacon is detected, so I need to do this differently. So just to show you the steps involved here, when you do a region monitor, you give it a name. In this case, giving it the location name. Oh, this is confusing, sorry for that. You give it a script name, and you can give it a UUID and a major and a minor. UUID, major, and minor together gives an iBeacon a unique ID. I did a session last year where I went into details on the iBeacon. If you want to know more about that technology, I would suggest that you go and watch the recordings from last year. So basically, we are just looking for the room beacons, and we are setting a new region for each major. Each major means, in the way we set it up, that each room has its own major. And the script we are setting off in the case of the location, the notification is the notification step. And bear in mind that first we set the region monitor, and when the iOS notify FileMaker Go that we have a beacon in range, it runs a script, and that script could be the local notification, which we have here. As you can see, there are several options available here. Well, we give it a name, we set a script that runs whenever you press the default button, which is the, basically, when you press any of the buttons, it runs a script. So when you run that script, you get some script parameters from the notification step. And by using that script parameter, you can determine in that script whether to do an action or do another action. So you can set up the delay, the title, the body, and button 1, 2, 3 label. So if you hit the button 1, it should bring FileMaker Go to the foreground. Thank you very much. Okay, so that's the new the new step in this. If we are just going for the region monitor action, so what happens here is basically the script parameter is which room did we went into, and we are searching for the room details and the date and time so that we can show you a popover showing you information about the room we are in and what's coming up next. So this is the other script. Okay, are you still awake, or do you understand what I'm talking about and what I'm saying? In case you don't get what I'm saying, you can just ask me to put a pencil in my mouth, meaning that I need to be pronouncing a little bit better. Okay? I hope it works. Right? So the event notification in terms of the sessions is pretty easy. So first off, we need to make sure that we are on an iOS device, as local notifications only work on iOS. Okay? So if we have already configured a notification for this event, then we go and clear the local notification. Bear in mind that we can only fire off 20 local notifications to the iOS. So that's also the reason why the button is only on my schedule and not on the full session list, because you can only ship off 20 notifications. Hopefully that will be enough. And in this case, we are actually lowering this to 19 because we need a local notification in case you want to turn that off for turn that on for the iBeacons feature. But if it wasn't set already, then we are setting it. Where are we setting it? There. Okay, down here. Actually, we are generating the text that we want to include into the notification. So we set the step here. We set a queue. We set the name of the notification. What is the script that should run whenever we tap on that notification, and the headline and the body, as well as the buttons that should run. So that's fairly easy. So basically just one single step. All the other code is just in order to make sure that it's working. Okay? So the feedback is very simple. It's going to the layout. It's doing a find with the parameter that is coming back from the notification. And then it's finally going to clear that local notification with the name of the notification so that it doesn't stack up in the queue of notifications that we are allowed to have. One other thing I would like to show is and I'm going to switch to the iPad, hopefully. If it behaves, it did. So here's my schedule, and that is nice. If you notice, there are some smiley faces on the right. That are a new feature in DevCon2Go this year where you can create your own custom events, meaning that you can schedule your meetings with friends or on the same list as the session list, so you won't miss anything. Now I have this session list here, and maybe we want to export this to a VCal. When you press this button, it will generate a file that can be imported directly into the Apple Calendar on the iOS device. And it also works on the desktop as well. Here's a small text saying that due to sandboxing, we need to send an email with this file, unfortunately. But that's why we are taking and create an email that you can send to yourself with the schedule. So all the sessions, all the scheduled sessions are now in this file, which is an iCal file that you can import to a normal calendar. That's a really cool feature, isn't it? Okay, yeah. It's also working for the contacts. So if you scan the QR codes on the attendee badge, or if you have created your own QR code in DevCon2Go, you can fill up a list with new contacts that you meet during the event. And when the event is over, you want to get them into your address book as well. So you can save as a vCard here. And now you can actually see the first contact in this file, and then you can add them to your address book by tapping the share button, or you can send it as a file, but you can copy to contacts. And now Wim is going to be into my contact book. Okay? Address book. Done. So these two things are, in my opinion, great integrations with something that people already know how to use. And this is incredibly simple. And I would love to show you how we do this. So basically, for the calendar file, we are going into a loop of the found records. And then I'm using a custom function that is called vCal subscribe, which means that it was basically written in order to generate a stream of events that you could subscribe to from a server. But it also works when you create this file. So basically, we are just putting in what are the time zone, it's confirmed, and so on and so forth. And there's even a link that takes you back to FileMaker, runs the script called callLink with the parameter of the session ID. So you get all these details. And this custom function, well, since it's completely open, you can go and steal it. And it's generating, you can dig into the format more here, but it's generating an event, a calendar event in the format of the vCal format that works with all types of calendars. And when it's done, we just put it into a container field and export it from there. If we look at a calendar file, you'll see it's actually pretty easy to get this. First off, we have, well, there's some begin vCalendar, begin time zone, and so on. And then already we have begin event and end event. So this is the block of information that you need to write in order to write the vCalendar format. And it's done for you by this custom function already, and then you can just save it. It's really a text file, but you just have to apply the file extension ICS, and then it will work all over. So let's take the vCard. That is basically also the exact same thing. We run a loop through the found records we want to include. We are using another custom function where you just refer to the name and the company and mobile and email. In this case, you could include other fields, and we can see those other fields in this custom function, which is also there for grabbing. Well, it's job title, phone, work, and so on. That is included in this, and then it has to have a header, well, begin vCard, what is the version, the character set is UTF-8, and then we need to end it with end vCard. So it's a fairly simple format that you can actually build upon, and the calendar format has a bunch of features that could be implemented, but in its simplest form, it's so easy to describe an event there. You have to have a start date and a start time, and end date and end time. And whenever you have a record within FileMaker that has a start and end point, you're able to create an event. But I really like this way of being able to create files that you can integrate with other apps, and it's so easy to do. If you create custom events, there is a, let me go back, there is a function saying export a synced file with your custom events. So this function basically takes the information on all your custom events and creates a JSON string here, which is saved into a text file that you can import on either your device again or on another device. So you could save this to your iCloud or Dropbox folder, and then you can get it from another device. And this is a way of, quote, synchronizing DevCon2Go between devices. But it's a very basic JSON that is just put into this text file. And the reason I'm talking about that is that this is another way, this is a very simple use of the JSON functionality. And maybe that will be a way for you to learn more if you're not versed very well in JSON. But basically, here again, here's export my events. It could be, and basically we are looping through. And for each iteration of the loop, we are using the JSON set elements. And then we actually, this is even more simple because we are just referring to a calculated field, and then we set it into this JSON string. So how does that calculated field look like? It looks like this, where we have the object, well, scripts here. So this is a calculated field that will update every time you make changes to the script, or to the data, I mean. And if we go in, I know it's a little bit confusing when I'm zoomed in and have to dig around, but I hope it's okay. So here's the object. So basically, we are using the JSON set elements, and then we are using the square parameters in order to set multiply objects within this JSON string. One thing to note, if you haven't worked a lot with the JSON stuff, is that, for example, the primary key, which is a UUID, you need to quote that in the string, because if it starts with a number, the JSON will treat it as a number, and then it will shrink down the UUID and convert it into a number. And that's not what you want to do. So use the quotes around this, and I use you have two options. You can use a name for what is the type of information in this value, or you can use the numbers. But when you can use the text, it's so much easier to read when you look at the code afterwards. So that's what I'm using all the time. And this approach is the most simple way of doing it. Yeah, it costs you a calculation field, but it's so much easier to just loop through and then grab. There's a bunch of other functionality, but I have tried to comment throughout the entire app with a lot of comments, so hopefully it will be easy for you. Should you deploy to FileMaker Go or to iOS app? So what are the pros with FileMaker Go? Deployment is fast. It's basically, well, you can host it on a server and then it's deployed already. Or you can copy the file directly to FileMaker Go. Well, you can send it on an email and open it. You can download it from a website, or you can put it on iCloud and then copy it to FileMaker Go. So when native FileMaker code is sufficient for your custom app, FileMaker Go is a perfect option for deployment. Also, FileMaker Go allows for multiply solutions. That's also a pro. And even distribution of files is easy by using a website or a copy to iCloud or email. So what are the cons? Well, FileMaker Go must be installed before we can get our solution deployed, right? Then you also need to deploy either a link to your solution or send it via email. So that's at least a two-step process involved in order to deploy the custom app to the user's devices. And FileMaker Go is not your brand. It's FileMaker's brand. So if you would like to brand your solution, FileMaker Go is not really the most optimal solution. If you want to do advanced integration with SDKs or plugins, you cannot do that with FileMaker Go. So those are the cons when you choose to deploy on FileMaker Go. So what about the iOS app SDK? Well, now it's your brand, right? You can give it an icon and a name, and it's your brand. And it's only a single app that you need to distribute. Integration with SDK and plugins is possible with the iOS app SDK. So you can do advanced stuff and integrate with other technologies like remote notifications and more. We have local notifications, but wouldn't it be great to have remote notifications as well? Well, you can do that with the iOS app SDK. So what about the cons? for a native iOS app? Well, deployment is more complicated because you have to build an Xcode project that has to be compiled, and then you have to ship it off to Apple that needs to approve it, and then it has to be posted to either the App Store or the Enterprise Store, or you need to do MDM in order to distribute your app. So it's more complicated. And new version cannot be deployed as fast as a FileMaker file because you need to go through all those steps again in order to deploy, and you have someone that needs to approve that it is safe to run the code. And you should always update your iOS app whenever FileMaker releases a new version. And actually, you should also do it when they release a VREF update, which means that you're on their terms, on their cycle. And just because they release something, you actually should also release a new version of your app. If you release to FileMaker Go, well, if FileMaker Go gets updated, fine. It doesn't need to bother you. So if you have any questions, there are 2 microphones there. Otherwise, you are more than welcome to send me an email. You are more than welcome to tag along during DevCon if you have questions or comments. Okay, so either this was very boring or maybe it was okay. Okay, thank you.